This will probably be a very unpopular opinion, but I would not take my RV back to Alaska or recommend that anyone else do it. Hello there, and welcome back to my living room, aka the RV that I live and travel in full time and that I just finished beating to heck on a summer trip to Alaska, which is what this video is entirely about. However, in an attempt to avoid sounding like your crazy aunt who just returned from a summer-long trip in Egypt and has cornered you in the kitchen during Thanksgiving with a 74-page-long photo album full of mummified cats and pyramids and is going to demand that you act very interested while I go into super long and super boring details about my trip, we are instead going to play a riveting game of expectations versus reality. Because I, like a normal mortal, had many expectations for my trip to Alaska based off of other people's YouTube videos and tales of their trips to the last frontier. And almost none of them came to fruition. So strap in, because it's story time. My expectations for the drive to and from Alaska were that it was gonna be pretty bumpy. And it absolutely was. Especially the section from Tok, Alaska to Destruction Bay, Canada, which, if you've not seen my video on that adventure of a drive already, you can check that out right over here. And I very much anticipated that things were going to break both inside and outside of the rig, and they did. We had a few items of glassware shatter, our slide surround broke into a million pieces, and our mini split did not fare well on the Canadian roads. But everything is fixed now, because Keith is basically Hermione Granger and he just goes around Reparo spelling everything while I just sit around and wait for him to fix them. Lastly, in terms of casualties, we did have a tire pop in Alaska, but that was a pretty quick fix and was definitely something that we expected to happen at some point to at least one of our setups. Because between the four of us, we had 18 tires. But what I did not expect of the drive was how absolutely breathtaking the scenery was. From the moment we entered Canada all the way into and around Alaska, the scenery was unlike anything I had ever seen before. Which is great because we were driving constantly for weeks with little to no cell service, and simply staring out the window for hours during a travel day was enough to keep us very captivated. And even when we would pause our travels for a lunch or a potty break, the places that we would pull off to on the side of the road were just stunning. And don't just take my word for it, take past travel Raini's perspective. No matter what you're doing, no matter where you're parked, there's always beautiful views. I mean, we are dumping our tanks at a gas station right now, and this is the view. See? Stunning. The weather in Alaska was definitely not what I or any of us expected, and we had so many locals telling us the entire trip that unfortunately we were there during a unseasonably cold summer, and that was just the luck of the draw. It rained a ton while we were there, and it was cold and gloomy on most days, which was a bummer some of the time. But when the sun did come out, oh boy, we enjoyed it. And I will add, despite the mostly rainy days, I think the weather must have been a positive thing in terms of mosquitoes, because other than the day that we crossed the border and were outside trying to take cute photos in front of the welcome sign, we did not experience mosquitoes hardly at all. And according to almost anyone that I have spoken to that's been to Alaska, that is their #1 complaint. So I'm gonna take that as a win. Now, while I'm on the subject of weather in Alaska, I would be remiss if I did not mention one teeny tiny little event that did occur and almost made me shit my pants. Now, you know the drill. I could tell you about the dramatic experience, but I want you to feel immersed. Okay, wow, we just got a tsunami warning, which I've never experienced in my life. It said you are in danger, get to high ground, high winds and waves coming. It's been raining all day, and I just checked the weather. It doesn't look promising. Are Kyle and Renee right behind us?
Yeah.
Okay. I think we're gonna reconvene with them and kind of try to get a game plan here.
Oh, maps, everything's all giving tsunami warnings right now. Like warnings, not just watch. Well, the higher we can go, the better.
Okay, let's do that then.
Okay.
There's a sheriff on the side of the road here, and Keith just ran out to go talk to her and see what's up. I just keep sitting here and thinking, we grabbed what was important, and that's all that I care about. So, man.
Okay, we are good. We're gonna go back.
We're good.
Yeah, so there was like a 7 point something earthquake that happened, and the tsunami is like Kodiak area. But when they give the warnings, they just give it out for the whole peninsula. Like wet and cold.
I know, you were taking it for the team, for all of us. Like, we were all in the truck chilling, and Keith's like the one running out and like talking to people, and we were like, just let us know if we're gonna die. Okay, listen, I was born and raised in an area of Arizona where nothing water related ever happens. So go easy on your desert dwelling friend because it was very scary to me. Also, it should be mentioned that when we returned to the RV park, there was a congregation of people gathered in front of the office, and they informed us that this kind of false alarm happens all the time. But the point is, be aware of that possibility if you go to Alaska. You're welcome. Fishing in Alaska both exceeded and failed my every expectations. But how could that possibly be so? Well, hold on to your pantsuit because I'm about to explain. You see, we went out on 2 different fishing excursions while in Alaska. The first was a halibut charter off of the shore of Anchor Point, which was really unique because they used tractors to launch and pull in the boats, and that was super fun to watch. It's giving Farm Boy Falls in Love with the Ocean vibes. Anyways, we booked a half-day excursion on a Friday, which just so happened to be the roughest day on the water that week. And thank Poseidon we all had the good sense to take Dramamine beforehand, because that was akin to the worst kind of Disney World ride.
I'm going to throw up. I think I'm gonna throw up.
Don't throw up.
But aside from the rocky waters, fishing in the ocean was one of the craziest experiences I've ever had. The fish were way bigger and floppier than I expected them to be, and they put up a fight when reeling them up into the boat. Which obviously was not a problem for me because I work out.
Come on, keep going.
We each got to catch and keep 2 fish, which equaled around 15 pounds of meat in total. So we had to freeze dry and shove all of that into our tiny RV refrigerator. But despite the size of my freezer, there was still room for more fish fillets to be stacked inside. And while halibut is a fine fish for eating, I had my heart set on another fish. And so many people said that there was absolutely no way that we were going to go fishing in Alaska and not catch a ton of salmon. I mean, it's basically a given. Salmon, Alaska, they go together like lemon tuna fish. Pretty proud of pulling that one from the archives of my mind. So we booked a salmon trip down the Kenai River, donned our waders like runway models, and took our excitement and enthusiasm out onto the water. And as our tour guide rowed us towards the morning sunrise, even he was confident that we would be taking home a delicious, fresh salmon for dinner. And I think you know where I'm going with this. We spent 6 hours fishing and caught nothing. Unfortunately for us, the salmon were running behind this season and we missed them by about a week. But the boat ride was still really fun. The river and surrounding mountain views were beautiful. We had the opportunity to learn how to fly fish, and I had a great time smacking Keith in the head with my fishing rod.
Keith has officially taken my fishing rod from me because I hit him in the head with it 4 times.
And before I flit off onto my next topic of discussion, you should know that due to superstitious reasons, if you bring a banana onto any boat in Alaska, the captain will throw you overboard. Or just ridicule you endlessly, but regardless, I wouldn't risk it. If you plan a trip to Alaska and don't intend to do any excursions or sightseeing while there, We were told by many people that if we went to Valdez, we absolutely had to do the Lulu Glacier and Wildlife boat tour. And given the name, I expected to see a glacier and a lot of wildlife. And I did, which pretty much resulted in an all-day long excursion of me going, "Oh, it's so cute! Oh, it's so cute! Oh, it's so cute!" We of course did see a glacier during the tour, and we went to the front of the boat and got to take a cute little photo in front of it. But don't let that smile fool you, because I was freezing. But I now understand why the Lulu is such a highly recommended excursion in Valdez, and I rate it a 10 out of 10 sea lion screams. Editing Raini here. Hello. Quick note on the Lulu Glacier and Wildlife Tour. The day that I began editing together this video, I was sent an article regarding a boat that ran aground near the Columbia Glacier in Valdez, and, well,
18 people were rescued from a boat near Valdez. The tour boat ran aground near the Columbia Glacier around 4:30 yesterday afternoon. The U.S. Coast Guard sent a response boat and 2 helicopters to pick up the passengers and crew. The 75-foot Lulu Belle had 19 people on board. The captain stayed with the boat overnight and refloated it at high tide.
So I still think you should book it, but just be aware that you may be getting the exclusive glacier, wildlife, and helicopter evacuation tour. Now, this next excursion that we did, I am not being dramatic when I say that this was the highlight of the entire trip for me, and we didn't even know that this excursion existed until we arrived in Seward. We knew about helicopter tours, and we knew about watching sled dogs run on a dirt track while pulling a wagon, but when Keith discovered and asked if I wanted to take a helicopter ride to the top of a glacier and ride in a sleigh for 2 miles pulled by Iditarod sled dogs on a snowy trail, I, once being a little girl who watched Balto so many times I can practically quote the movie from memory, was absolutely stoked.
Look at them.
Look at his belly! What's in the belly?
The total helicopter and sleigh ride excursion was $573 in total, and I think it was worth every frickin' penny. However, there were a few free sightseeing adventures that also exceeded my expectations. Like seeing the glaciers and waterfalls that are scattered throughout the entire state was literally never disappointing. And while I didn't get to eat any of them, watching a few salmon zing their way up the river was a fun and free afternoon adventure that I thoroughly enjoyed. Other than the animals that I saw during the excursions, which were all great animals, A+s all around, I expected to see a lot more bears and mooses. But we did see a mama bear and her 3 cubs on one of our hikes, and it was so sweet and so cute up until the point when Keith just had to point out,
oh, she got busy last year.
We did see a ton of bald eagles while we were in Alaska, which is always really cool because America! But there was one animal in particular that I saw a lot of in Alaska. And I'm just going to let poetic Raini read you an excerpt from her written collections to really drive home the experiences that we had with this not very majestic creature. To Alaska we went, my good friends and I, to see glaciers, whales, and an Arctic sky. But lo and behold, what did we see? A congregation of seagulls, as big as can be. Seagull babies scattered on the Alaskan ground, so cute and so fluffy, stumbling all around. While I cooed and I awed, poor Keith did fast learn, if you walk by a nest, you get pecked in return. Now me I gave chase with zest and with glee, down Alaska's cold beaches where birds met the sea. And while during this trip I saw several bald eagles, I question, why isn't this state's bird a seagull? And with that, I wrap up the expectations versus reality of my RVing trip to Alaska. Now it's time for a few final thoughts. Would I do it again? This will probably be a very unpopular opinion, but I would not take my RV back to Alaska or recommend that anyone else do it. At least not for anything less than a 2-month-long trip. But if you are wanting to go to Alaska for anything less than 2 months, I would recommend flying into Anchorage and then just renting one of those RVs that you can tour the entire state in. That said, if you were going to brave Alaska in your own rig, I highly recommend planning an entire summer. We unfortunately had obligations in the lower 48, so our trip was from the beginning of June to the beginning of August. And there is so much that I still want to do, like catch some damn salmon. But now I guess I have a great reason to go back. Lastly, and I'm gonna get a little sentimental here, if you have an opportunity to caravan Alaska with your travel besties, do it, because you will not regret it. Keith and I know that this trip was made 10 times better because we did it with Kyle and Renee. And even the most mundane of tasks like driving or doing laundry or going to the grocery store were so much fun because we were all doing it together. And this once-in-a-lifetime trip with them really solidified and reminded us why we chose to live this lifestyle, which was to do amazing things with some of our favorite people in places that we might never have traveled to otherwise. And with that, I will now gladly collect my commission check from every RV manufacturer in the world, because that was a hell of a sales pitch. As always, I put out new videos on Fridays, and I will see you on the next one.
This is the best thing we've ever done. This is what you do in Alaska.